Hej och välkommen till Högkänsligt. Podden som uppmuntrar dig som högkänslig att våga vara dig själv och att anpassa livet efter dig och inte tvärtom. Jag heter Kristoffer Ejebro och i denna podd delar jag och andra fantastiska människor med oss av erfarenheter, råd och insikter kring att leva som känslostark i en superstressig värld. För med på en resa fylld av känslor, kontraster och inte minst personlig utveckling. Där vi hyllar högkänsligheten som en kraftfull gåva och inte en förbannelse. Nu åker vi. Idag har jag förmånen och äran att få samtala med en människa som har varit väldigt viktig för mig under det senaste året. Han har hjälpt mig med den här podden som jag nu sitter och pratar i. Men den här poddresan som han har hjälpt mig på har inneburit så mycket mer än att bara skapa den här podden. Det var så otroligt mycket annat som har dykt upp under den här resan. Så ja, jag är jätteglad att han vill vara med här. Han pratar inte svenska, så det kommer att bli på engelska. Den här intervjun eller samtalet. Hoppas det känns okej. So let's switch over to English then. I would like to welcome my podcast mentor, the rockstar, Jedi master, and my friend, Kurtis Goodwolf.
Well, hello, Christopher. Thank you for that wonderfully long Swedish introduction that I had no idea what you were saying, and that incredibly short English introduction that I understood. Thank you very much. It was so heartfelt.
And I told, or I spoke in Swedish and told about how important you have been for me the last year. Not only creating this podcast, but this podcast journey. It has really been a journey for me that has brought up old demons, old fears, old insecurities. And I would like to begin with just saying that I'm so grateful that you've been here for me this year. And you has been a great inspiration, and you are a fantastic human being with a great sense of humor. So please tell me a bit more about yourself. Who are you and what are you doing?
Thank you for that. I really appreciate you saying that. You did the work. I did nothing. But anyway, who am I? What am I doing? I'm living the time of my life in Vietnam. I'm Irish, and I left Ireland in 2019 for a holiday, and came to Vietnam and fell in love with the place. Went back to Ireland, vowed that I'd return to Vietnam. Came here in 2020 again, and got stuck here in COVID. So I'm a recovering Irishman, based in Vietnam. Doing my best to live life one day at a time and kind of immerse myself in new cultures and we're getting deep real quick, but it's amazing when someone says, like, who are you and what do you do? 5 years ago, I would have said, I am such and such, and I would have given my job title, And that's one thing that Vietnam has taught me, and living here has taught me. It's like, your job title doesn't matter. So who am I? You know what, man? I don't know. I'm still figuring it out. I know what I can do. I know I can play music, and I know I can produce podcasts and things like that. But who am I? Who knows? Changes every day.
Yeah, life is really a journey. And before I forget, I must ask you about, you said music. I said rockstar in your introduction. you actually have one of the coolest rock star last names ever, Goodwolf. Is that your family name or is it taken?
That name was something that I chose because one day I was taking a poo in my sister's bathroom, right? And I noticed on the back of her door was the story of the old Indian parable. And every time I took a poo in my sister's bathroom, there was nothing else to do but to read that story over and over again. So there were a grandfather and a grandson sitting around a fireplace or a fire. And the grandson says to the grandfather, "Why are some people good and why are some people evil?" And the grandfather basically said, "Well, inside each person there are two wolves, and you become the one you feed." So I read this over and over again because I took many poos in my sister's bathroom. She always fed me, that's why. And eventually I thought to myself, well, I've got a lot of negative traits. And that parable, that story made me really think about what my negative traits were and what were the things that I wanted to change and what were the things that I had inherited as a habit. What are the things that I decided on that were now a part of who I was and how I acted, how I treated people, my belief system, my thought system, everything that I did. It made me question everything, and it kind of gave me hope of change. You become the one you feed. So the seed was planted in my mind to change my name eventually. And after many poops, I did. Not legally, but what had happened is I'd stopped playing music for about 10 years. And in 2015 or 14, after 10 years of not playing any music, any gigs or anything like that, I decided to start playing music again. And I didn't go under my old name, or my real name, as you'd say. I call myself Kurtis Goodwolf. And that is the story of why my name is Kurtis Goodwolf. And it's just a reminder to me that it's a constant, like you said, journey. There is no perfection in it. But I needed something to remind myself of the direction that I wanted to stay on, you know? And it does help.
Wow, that's a great story. A real poop story, shitty story. And I like that it's also a part of your journey from, as I call it, the old Curtis to the new Curtis. And that's a similar story that I have been taking in my life, the journey from old Christopher to new Christopher, or the real, the authentic Christopher. And I'm really interested to know more about this journey, how you went from old Curtis to the real Curtis. But I also know that you're a bit older than me, a few years older. So you were older during the amazing 80s. So how was it to growing up in the 80s in Ireland?
That's a very big question to ask because it was a roller coaster. So my family are mixed race. They're of mixed race. And I'm adopted. So let me just give you the context first, and I'll tell you what it was like. So I'm adopted to. I was adopted in the 80s to a Singaporean woman and a Norwegian man who ended up living in Ireland, moving to Ireland. My birth family, however, are 100% Irish, 100%. And I only found that out when I was, I think, in my 20s or 30s. But anyway, so Anita and Kurt and Anita Nicolaisen were moving around the world uh, uh, because of my father's position in his business. And they came to Ireland and they adopted myself and my sister. And so My other sisters, my other two sisters who came to Ireland with them, they were, and they are, Malay, Chinese, Singaporean, that kind of a mix. And then the sister that got adopted in Ireland is half Trinidad, Tobago, half Irish. So everybody in the family was dark skinned, except for my father, who was white because he was a pasty, tall, Viking, Norwegian dude. Right. So as you can imagine, growing up in the 80s in a Catholic country was quite interesting because we were the only outsiders on the block. We were the only foreigners there. And there was quite a lot of pushback because of that, including letters and petitions sent around the neighborhood to have us removed because we were foreign and things like that. Now, I was quite young to remember that. I only found that out when I was about 12 or 13. But I was always protected by my three older sisters, you know. But saying that, I was always treated as an outsider, you know, especially in the community that I grew up in the city that I grew up in Cork. That's one of the reasons why I left Cork and went to Dublin, is because I was always treated as someone who was not from there. And I do love the town, and I do love the city, and I do love the people there. I found that I had too many experiences of closed-mindedness, parochialism. You had to know somebody who knew you, or your father had to play a sport with somebody else's father to be accepted. It was very clannish, very cliquey. But other than that, growing up in the 80s in Ireland, where I had no mobile phone, and my recreation times were leaving the house and going outside in the sunshine, in the rain, in the cold, in the wind. It didn't matter what the weather was like outside. That was the only thing we could do, is go outside or stay inside. And if you're a kid growing up with no phone, no PS4, no unlimited streams of Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube, that's it. That's all you got. So I'm glad you asked that question, because I do value the memories that I have from growing up in a society that wasn't so distracted and force-fed information that is always catering to somebody else's narrative, and usually not in the best interest of the person that's consuming that content. So growing up in Ireland in the 80s was up and down, but it gave me a lot of insight into why people act in certain ways, and it gave me a lot of experience that I can use for the benefit of myself and those around me. I had one traumatic incident in the 80s when I saw Optimus Prime being stabbed through the chest by some bad Decepticon. I still can't think of it. I don't even know who that Decepticon is anymore. I just remember it as clear as day. It was just standing over him and then right into the heart, even though he doesn't have a heart because he's a fucking robot. But anyway, that I remember clear as day, and some other things like fishing with my mother. But the 80s were good. The 80s were good. It was G.I. Joe. It was Transformers. The late 80s were MTV, Headbangers Ball, the birth of Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, finding out about all these American bands that were playing the airwaves, along with Irish bands that had that 90s, early 80s grungy feel to it as well, you know. So all in all, will I do it again? 100%. 100%. Good time. I could talk to you about growing up in Ireland forever, but I won't. I'll end it there.
Thanks for sharing that. And I agree with you. That situation with Optimus Prime, it made me cry as well. So first I must, of course, ask you, what is your favorite Transformer character?
I got to be honest with you, I can't really remember them anymore. What was the bad guy? Oh, Starscream. Was it Starscream or Starscream? Yeah. I don't know why, but I really liked that dude. He was the bad guy, wasn't he? He was Decepticon. I don't know why. I had all of them.
Starscream was the guy always standing behind Megatron and waiting for him to remove Megatron from the leader position. So he was kind of a sneaky guy. And as you may see, I also dressed up for this interview. I have my Autobot t-shirt today. Optimus Prime were one of my big favorites, and I still have my old action figures standing in my house in Lycksele. But you also mentioned music. You mentioned Headbangers Ball, and it happened a lot late 80s and early 90s when it comes to music. And of course, the whole of 80s when you look at heavy metal, which is my main kind of music. But how did music influence you? How did music become a big part of your life?
I had a very interesting upbringing in Ireland because I was raised under a half and half roof. Okay. I wasn't raised in a traditional Irish family because my adopted family were not Irish. So while my father was there, it was a traditional Norwegian upbringing. We won't even talk about that. And then when my mother was there, it was traditional Asian upbringing, right? I was a fucking confused child. I was very confused. So, because at home, if my father was home from his 3 months on, 3 weeks off kind of thing from his job, it was very straight to the point, Norwegian kind of thing going on. And 80s Norwegian as well. I'm not talking about 2024 Norwegian. And so it was very kind of cut and shut. Do what you're told, shut up. That's it. When my mother was there, it was even stricter because she was Asian. It's just a different ball game. But then when I started leaving the house, I noticed that it was a completely different world outside. So I essentially had to become three different people at any one given time, right? And so when I left the house is when I started appreciating music because I got to meet people who would share a common interest of music. And how I actually really got introduced to that music was by my first ever Walkman. I think my sister bought it for me. I must have been about, I don't know, 8 or 9. She bought me a Walkman, one of those old Sony ones with the yellow or orange headphones. You know, you couldn't listen to music on that today. But I got given one of those and I had a radio on it. And I think in Ireland at that stage, it was like 2 radio channels. And I will never forget the day I found a radio station called 2FM and a radio DJ called Dave Fanning. And I think the first songs or the first bands I heard were Pearl Jam, Soundgarden. No, it was Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, The Frames, and somebody else. Maybe that was 91 actually. But I got introduced like a wallop. It was just like bang. And that was it. I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked. Music absolutely changed my life. My sister started to play guitar when I was around 12, 13, and I was fascinated by it. And one day I just went and I bought one. I was in boarding school at that time. I bought myself an electric guitar and just started practicing and playing. I think it became the only creative output and artistic output that I had. You know, I think when I was around 12, my parents decided it was a good idea to take away all my cassette tapes, all my Nirvana, all my Pearl Jam, all my Smashing Pumpkins, all the stuff. And as an act of defiance, I just got more into music. You know, their retaliation was, oh well, you know, it's bad music, it's bad for you, it's evil, it's making you act out. And my answer to that was, it's your parenting that's making me act out. This music is actually giving me a form of release, you know? And I feel like music and podcasting is very, very similar. You get to tell a story, you get to tell it your way, and you get to tell it to pretty much who you want. And it takes a while to build up an audience. But when you listen back to a podcast and you listen back to a song that you write, I feel that you get validation of sort. You know, you know what it's like when you create a bit of a community, when you're a part of a bit of community and you speak about a certain topic and somebody reaches out to you and says, I really, really love the way you talked about X topic. It's the same as being on a stage and playing one of your own songs. It's all nerve wracking, podcasting and playing music. And you get off the stage and you could have 10 people there. You could have 100 people there. It doesn't matter. But somebody will come up and say, I really like that song you wrote, that, and you had this word or this line in it, and it really captured me and it made me think about something. It resonated with me, you know? So I think that music changed my life because it gave me an opportunity to connect with people in a way and to activate people in a way, to release something, to have an emotional response in someone that was positive. Even though most of the time it's crying, they're tears because I write sad songs, you know, but it's still positive, you know. And so I think this kind of an art form, which is podcasting, which is music, is life changing for anybody that gets into it. It's a life changing gift for everybody because everyone has the capacity to use their voice in whatever way they want to, and they could choose podcasting, and they could choose acting, and they could choose music. I feel it's kind of all pointing towards the same direction, though. It's all pointing towards getting something out that is inside and inspiring somebody else to react to that in a positive way, you know? And just knowing that I could do that kind of gave me a sense of purpose.
Thank you for sharing. And I agree, music is such a powerful way of expressing yourself, the same way with podcasting, but also listening to music. I know during my journey, music helped me when I had crappy days, make me feel better, to give me support. But music brings me even higher on my better days and just take me from here to here. And there's so many different kind of styles of music. So it's always a type of music that fits this situation you are in right now to help you, to make you feel better.
Interesting you say that. I left home when I was 16. I think I was 16. And I had no way to express how I was feeling, the fact that I'd left home and left school, right? And I discovered Radiohead's The Bends album in 1996 when I was 16. And I had an apartment. And I learned to sing by singing that album over and over and over and over and over again for months, for absolute months, because that album summed up all the pain and the hurt and the resentment I was feeling and the anger, and I latched onto it. So having a piece of music or a type of music fit any scenario for you, I totally agree with that. And the funny thing is sometimes it just appears out of nowhere. And you're like, where did that come from? That just suddenly existed to the perfect key and tone of my life. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Mm. And as you told, music was a part for you to bring out your artistic expression, but feelings you had inside. But was it also, since you were, as you told, you were seen as an outsider in the 80s in Ireland, in Cork, was it also maybe a way for you to create an identity, to become someone?
Absolutely. 100%, and it still is. There's a persona that my partner, my girlfriend, she knows that I have a persona when I get on stage. I put on a jacket and I turned into the performer. The jacket was a lot bigger when I was drinking and things like that. I don't drink now. But I remember at one stage when I was living in Spain, in Barcelona, I used to have 2 shots of whiskey and a beer before I got on stage. And I turned into this completely different person. But inside, I was absolutely dying. I remember, I think my last gig in Barcelona was 2006, and I got off the stage and I went and I sat down with my girlfriend at the time. And I broke down. I absolutely broke down, because what I'd been doing is I'd been masking myself as a musician. That's it. And so I think that night I came to realize that nobody actually knew who I was. They knew the person I was when I was on stage, but that wasn't even me. Do you know? So I did find that music and performing gave me an excuse to be somebody else, or try to be someone else. Or maybe it was giving me the excuse to be myself. I'm still working that out, right? But that night, I said to her, nobody actually knows me. So I think I need to stop playing music. And I did. I stopped there and then. And I didn't pick up a guitar again. I didn't start playing again until 2015. A good 10 years. So yeah. You can get lost in it. You can get lost in the act. I'm just going to talk about myself. I hadn't emotionally developed enough to really know who I was, right? So when I got on the stage, I took parts of different personas and went, oh, well, this. I had no idea I was actually doing that in real life as well.
I recognize what the things you are telling me, and I also have an old life where I try to be someone else based on society, expectations from me, but also expectation I thought other people had on me. So I have more or less played an act or a character for almost 40 years. So I clearly can hear that this, I mean, especially maybe the thing where you put down your music for almost 10 years, was a big part of your journey from the old Kurtis to the real Kurtis, or the new Kurtis, or the genuine Kurtis. So can you tell me a bit more about this journey?
Where do you want to start? This journey started a long time ago. This journey started in the 80s, finding out I was adopted, and being like, shit, then who am I? If I'm adopted, and this is my family, who am I? Which was a terrible thought to put into my head. Terrible. At that age. So I was looking for me. I wasn't lost. It took me a long time to realize that I was here all along. And it can be tough to realize that the majority of thoughts in your head are not your own, right? It can be tough to realize that maybe, just maybe, you are acting on patterns that have been put into you by society or by your parents or by something that happened in the past. And those decisions were made by you to act a certain way for a very long period of time. It can be hard to realize that you are the person that, causes your own ups and downs in life. So my journey started a long time ago, and I'm still on it. It's a wonderful experience. It's absolutely fantastic. And anyone that tells you that it's perfect and it's all butterflies and rainbows is full of shit. You have to accept the fact that pain creates change, And so when I faced my pains, when I faced my realities, that's when the biggest changes came. The biggest influences for changes came. When I got here in 2000 or 2020 and 2019, wow, I could drink I was Irish. Of course I could drink. I am Irish. Of course I can drink. And it was one of the biggest changes in my life has been not drinking and realizing why I even started drinking in the first place. And I really feel that the only reason why I gave up drinking or had the opportunity to realize I needed to stop drinking was because I was away from Ireland and that certain culture that was happening around me all the time. And so about 3 years ago, I was just like, I'm done. I've had enough. And through some questions I've been asking myself and working various programs and all that kind of jazz, I realized that the reason why I started drinking is because I wanted to feel different. Now, why would a 10-year-old or 11-year-old break into their parents' liquor cabinet and fill up a jar this size with various concoctions of alcohol to go out and get drunk? Why would a child do that? I was a child of that. That developed into harder substances. Let's just say that. But it also made me realize that I was going out drinking because I didn't like crowds. Right? So if you live in a society like Ireland, I don't know if it's like that anymore, but back in the 90s, the pub was where you went. If there was a marriage, you go to the pub. If you had a fight with someone, you go to the bar. If you broke up with someone, if you got together with someone, if you had a fight at home with someone, any single event in your life always revolved around, at some stage, going to the bar or getting drunk, right? And I remember the first time I was introduced to that, and I fucking hated the idea of getting into a bar with a bunch of strangers. I couldn't handle it. It was a very Irish thing to do, right? But you got to remember that I grew up in a family that didn't act Irish. We weren't treated like Irish kids. We weren't raised like Irish kids. So when my older sisters got together with their now husbands, their families would go to the pub on a Sunday. And me being 8, 9, 10, 12, whatever age I was, I would be dragged along by my parents to go to these pubs. And everyone's acting a certain way and laughing and joking and having the crack. And I'm sitting there going, this is weird. This doesn't feel right. Because it wasn't something that I'd grown up with or been used to. So when I got a bit older into my teens, I was like, okay, well, the only thing to do in life is go drinking on the weekends and get drunk with your friends. And I don't really like going to bars. So what am I going to do? I know. Before I go to the pubs, I'll get drunk. Because that will just get rid of all my inhibitions. And I'll be able to walk into any bar and pretend I'm whoever the fuck I want to be. And that was one of the biggest decisions I made in my life that impacted my health, my mental and physical and spiritual health in a negative way. But it is now one of my greatest assets. It's one of my greatest stories that I can tell people. That entire story is a tool that I can now use on myself. And it's something that I use to kind of see through people's motives or how they speak or how they act. And so the entire journey is absolutely like a roller coaster, But one of the fundamental things that I needed to do to really stay on the course of being on that journey is remove anything that had the power to change the way I was feeling. Anything at all. I don't even take prescription medication. I don't drink. I don't take drugs. I won't even do magic mushrooms. And they're medicinal. And once I got rid of that, I had no choice but to face myself head on. And I think that was one of the biggest changes, is when you can recognize yourself, and you can really recognize yourself. Because when you can really recognize yourself and start working on your journey, other people see that in you. And the real people who have worked through it, who have done it, will rally around you. when you're at that space. But otherwise, they won't appear. You'll just attract people that are in the same space as you, which can sometimes be positive, but from my experience is often negative.
I agree. And I also, it's a similar story you tell that I've been through as well. This part with the alcohol. I used a lot of alcohol to both escape life, but maybe mostly escape myself and who I really was or were, and shut down my feelings because you and me, we have talked about a lot about my HSP, being a highly sensitive person. I shut down when I was quite young, and this alcohol was another way of shutting down my emotion and escape who I really was. But the same you said, I also felt that alcohol is poison. It just drained me both mentally but physically as well. So I came to a part in life when I just felt I cannot drink any more alcohol because I just feel so bad. I'm like hungover for 3 weeks after my bachelor party. And I just said, I can't take this anymore. So I had almost a 10-year break from alcohol. And I remember the first years, I really struggled to go out on parties and who am I when I'm not drunk? Who am I? And why would other people talk to me now when I'm not drunk and standing on the table and singing? And that was a very tough journey, but also a very giving journey as well. To really feel that people are interested in who I am, even when I'm myself, even though I'm not drunk and try to act cool and tough and loud and so on. So is this something also you can recognize when you started to stop drinking and try to be yourself and find yourself and this identity? What will people think about me now?
I think there's a lot to be said about the term finding yourself. You know, it's I'm not sure if I agree with that term anymore because from my own personal experience, I realized that I was never lost. I was there all along. It was all the sort of shit that was put inside my head, you know, stuff that I didn't ask for, being a part of systems that I didn't, you know, didn't want to be a part of. I wasn't given a choice, you know. So I don't think we need to be found. I think we're there. I think we're all there, and I think society puts, or certain societies and certain elements of it, puts things on top of us that compresses who we really are underneath down to a very small grain in some instances. And that grain will always speak to us in some way. So when a person is out womanizing or drug taking or closing that big deal where they need to step on somebody's head to get ahead and make that extra bonus, that little grain is speaking to us. And that grain has always been speaking to us since we were a child. It reminds me of one of the first times I felt complete and utter sadness as a child, like literally devastating sadness. And this was before Optimus Prime got stabbed through the heart. I was walking across the St. Patrick's Bridge in Cork with my mother, and for the first time I saw a homeless person. And I asked my mother, why is that person there? What are they doing there? And my mother said, well, he's homeless. And I was broken. I was like, how can somebody be homeless? And my mother's answer was, that's just the way it is. Now, my mother wasn't perfect, but that was a terrible fucking answer. That's just the way it is. So if you are a parent listening to this, don't tell your child that's just the way it is, because your child would then grow up to believe that there is nothing that can be done in this world to change things like those, right? Which is completely untrue. But anyway, I digress. So going back to that part of us who's kind of pushed down, and that grain always speaking to us because we've been taught how to act a certain way that goes against it. I know that I numbed that with drugs and alcohol and everything else. I know I did. I know for a fact I did. And a lot of people numb that grain of truth, that voice of truth that comes up inside them by doing a whole host of things. It could be working. That's one of the biggest things that I noticed when I stopped drinking is like, fuck, what am I going to do now? I became fixated on work. I became addicted to work because, again, it was a distraction, you know? So to answer your question, yeah, I totally resonate with everything you're saying, you know?
And I agree with you. It's not about finding yourself. It's about remembering who you are. And the struggle, at least for me, has been listening to my heart when my mind is trying to run the show. Because I think that we always have deep inside of us, the real you, the real me, that give you feelings of what is right and wrong for you. Who are you?
So if you're going to give someone a crash course on how to stop listening to their head and start listening to their heart, what would you say to them?
I would begin by saying, move up to the northern part of Sweden in the woods, living like this, because it's a fantastic environment here. I get calm. My stress levels are just going down. And that is a main thing for me, to be able to quiet my mind and be able to listen to my heart, to be calm, to remove stress in my life. And being an HSP, a lot of my life journey has been about limiting my stress levels, finding ways to calm down, find people, environment, things to do where I really feel at ease, where I feel relaxed. And then my heart is speaking much louder. It's much more easy to listen to my heart than these thoughts that are over analyzing and trying to judge other and compare with other and so on. So the more relaxed I am, it can be deep breathing, or it can be meditating, or it can be listening to great music, to just be relaxed, then my heart is speaking up.
Can I ask you a question? Do you mind? What is a highly sensitive person? Because my argument to whatever you're going to say is a highly sensitive person is a human being.
I don't really like either to put like stamps on people like HSP or ADD or ADHD, or because I think like this: we are human beings, and every human being is unique, and we are not alike. So when it comes to sensitivity, I don't think that we all have the same sensitivity. Some people are more sensitive than the other, but I agree that as a human being, you have this sensitivity. But depending on how you're living your life, and if you let your mind control yourself or your actions, and using substances to flee yourself, you dampen this sensitivity. You're getting less sensitive. Because I can remember when I grew up, I was so sensitive to everything, and then when I started to build this like shield to shield me from all this stress, and then for a long time of my life, I couldn't feel feelings at all. So then I would say that, I cannot feel feeling, or human beings, we are not here to sense feeling or being sensitive. But when I changed my life and my life crashed, and this shield also crashed, I could feel so much. In the beginning it was terrible because I wasn't used to it. And the first feeling that came up, it was all the negative feelings I just stuffed down, pressed down, avoided. But after those feelings had come up, then I started to feel these wonderful feelings. But joy, happiness, love, creativity. So I absolutely agree that we as human beings, we are sensitive people, and we have the possibility to feel feelings, all different kind of feelings. But a lot of us are fleeing from them.
What was the catalyst, the main catalyst for you to change? Was there one particular incident? What was it? Culmination?
I would say the main catalyst was when me and my life crashed in 2017, and everything crashed. My shield crashed, my energy levels crashed. And after 6 tough months, when I'm started to rise again, and I realized that there are people that are still wanting to hang out with me or like me, even though I'm, in my eyes or my old way of judging people, I was as slow as you can get. I was depressed. I was divorced. I were unemployed. But like in my mind or my old thoughts, I was completely worthless. But I started to realize that people like me anyway, my real friends. And then I started to feel this kind of feelings I never felt before, that, wow, they like me for who I am, not what I'm saying and what I'm doing. And that was the main catalyst for me. So, you know what I will ask you now? Do you have a main catalyst?
I don't think there was a main catalyst. I think that as a young kid, I made a decision to go down a path that was difficult, a dark path. I pretty much remember making the choice to do that, and knowing that I had to go that way, that I could not grow up with the silver spoon in my mouth, with the entitlement, with the benefit of having a family that, having a family that had money, basically, when I was surrounded by a lot of poverty. Um, and I remember at that age kind of making a decision saying, I have to go down this way because that's the only way I'm going to understand life. That's the only way I'm going to appreciate it or know about it. And I went for it. And anything that a good kid could have done, I went the opposite way. Now, I'm not saying that I did things with malintent or anything like that, but I decided to go on another journey instead of finishing school, going to university, finding a nice girl to settle down with, buying a house, and losing it all in any of the fucking recessions that could have happened. You know? So I don't think there was a catalyst to the journey. It was just, I think we're all constantly presented with choices, and we're given the tools to change if we want them. Whether that's a song to drop into our lives, or a cartoon to inspire us, or a person will come along and have a conversation with. It's all right there. It's whether you can see it or not, or choose to accept that you can see it. So I don't think there's a catalyst, but I can tell you one thing. I've got four amazing sisters, and if it wasn't for them, I can tell you now, I would be in a lot worse state than I was. You know,
And now, when you're standing here, or not here, but virtually here, you're standing in Vietnam, and you have been living a life and a journey, and you are finding more, not finding yourself, but remembering more and more who you really are. So, what is your motivation, or your calling, or your vision in your life right now?
I think my purpose and my calling is to be as much as the change of the world that I can be myself. And I think that's all we can ask of anybody. If they recognize negativity or certain traits in themselves that are not, don't help anybody else around them, I think it's up to us to recognize those and work on those, right? Because if we stop having a negative effect on people around us, then we take burden off other people, and we might, and I'm not saying we might inspire them; they might be inspired. It's not up to us to inspire other people. We just be and do, and it's up to another person to be and do, right? So, if anything, I think my sole purpose is to just address my own life, my own actions, my own thoughts, and my own direction. And some people say they get inspired by me sometimes, and that's cool. But I'm not here to lead people or inspire people or anything like that. And I think that if we all just take care of our own business and focus our attentions on ourselves for the greater community around us, the world would be a far happier place than it is now.
Wow, that's beautiful. And I agree. To start with oneself, to be, to live your life as best as you can, or live a life that you really want to live, and that gives you, you feel good, you get a lot of energy, and then you have energy to send out to others. And even though you said that you're not here to influence other or inspire other, but you really have done that for me during this last year and my podcast journey that has involved so much more for me. And it has been great talking to you. But to conclude, I have a question that I ask most of my guests. A big part of my life is living a life that gives me, in Swedish, it's levnadsglädje, joy of living. I try every day to live a life that I feel for, to live just this moment, to live my life in a way I like, not thinking about what other people think about me. So my question is, what is joy of living for you?
I got two things that come to mind. Uh, the first one is, they say that when you stop thinking and relax, wherever your mind goes is where you're supposed to be, right? And so for many months, I had this idea of doing a music video with some of the people that I play music with here, and we did it. We got on the stage, we had a huge crowd. It ended up being one of the band members' final gigs, and he left the country. Luke, he went back to the UK. And to be on a stage, sharing intimacy, authenticity, and vulnerability with a bunch of people, being able to let go of yourself and just feel, and having a crowd in front of you that are there feeling the exact same thing, it is better than any shot of Jägermeister or a line of Coke or hit off a bong or whatever it is. That's, for me, that's truly living. It's absolutely incredible. The second thing is when I watch people remove certain constraints that have been put in front of them slowly but surely, and figure out challenges that they can see pop up in their life when they start to tell the truth to a public audience and to live for their purpose. When you start seeing that change in other people, it makes life worthwhile. Because I really believe that we were not put here for our egos. We were put here to constantly think of and help others. So joy of living is seeing somebody go through an incredible transformation that puts them more in touch with themselves than ever before. And that includes getting an emotional response from them when I'm playing music, because they're in a different place. They've transported. They've transported from. They could be standing. If you're at a gig, you could be standing in the same place. There's no music. There's nothing going on. There's nobody else around. You're in the same place, right? The band come on. People start dancing. Everyone starts having fun. You're in the same place, but you're transported in your mind to another world because of the emotions that you're going through. And it's the same with, for example, watching you go through the challenges that you face with setting up your podcast, and we had many calls about that. But the before and after, it's just like, So that's a joy of living for me, my friend.
Great explanation of your way of joy of living. Wow. I just get goosebumps when you're telling me about this. Almost got me as emotional as when Optimus Prime got stabbed, but almost. All right, Kurtis, it's been an honor to have you here on my podcast. And do you have any final words before we say goodbye?
Just live. Just keep living, man. You're a big inspiration to me too. You're not afraid to ask questions of yourself or anybody else around you, which I really, really respect and admire. So just keep telling the truth. And if anybody who's listening out there is going through anything as a question, just tell the truth. Be that fucking daring that you tell the truth. And keep on rocking in the free world.
I agree. I was waiting for that.
I know you were. Good man.
Rock on. Tack för att du har lyssnat på Högkänsligt. Podden som ser högkänslighet som en gåva och inte en förbannelse. Om du vill fortsätta resan tillsammans med mig och mina gäster, besök gärna hemsidan på www.högkänsligt.se och följ mig på Instagram och Facebook. På hemsidan finns fler avsnitt, mer material och möjlighet att fördjupa dig i ämnen såsom personlig utveckling, högkänslighet, hälsa, livsstil och inte minst levnadsglädje. Allt kryddat med en lagom dos 80-tals nostalgi och humor. Och glöm inte, anpassa livet efter dig och inte tvärtom. För du är helt unik. Ta hand om dig och rock on.